Hello, good evening everyone. How are we doing? Oh, come on. How are we doing, everyone? Yeah. All right, that's a bit more like it. Back to the pantomime. Or is it pantomime season soon? Hello everyone, so good to see you again. Thank you for filling out the room. Hello to people online watching back. It's great to have you virtually. I'm really thrilled today to be joined by two absolutely outstanding songwriters and artists. We're going to have a proper little chinwag about what it means to be a songwriter in 2023, the year of everything changing. So please, can you give it up and a big round of applause for BEKA and Joel Baker. All right, welcome. Thank you so much for coming along.
It's an honour to be here, JD. Thank you so much for inviting us. Really appreciate it.
And great to see you as well. Thank you, BEKA.
I feel so overexcited.
I think we all are. Sorry, we've been hanging out in the green room, so that's why we're a bit delayed, but better late than never. This is our obviously weekly event, as we've been discussing, and for season 4 of Music Industry Mondays, we're now on episode 54, which is a bit nuts. We've been dissecting what we think are going to be the problems, all issues facing the music industry in 2023 and 2024. But before we get into that, it'd be great to hear a bit about both of you, because you've both done some really fucking cool shit as songwriters. I think everyone, if you don't already know their work, A, what are you on about, and B, they're going to tell you. So, BEKA, should we start with you? How did you get into this? And tell the audience that may not know you what you've done, because it's really cool.
Hey gang, it's so lovely to be here. I feel very honoured to be able to have some time with you. So I'm BEKA. I guess my career was like a little bit classic in that I started with the whole do I do academia, do I do music, realising that I would be doing something academic, thinking about everyone doing the thing I really wanted to do. So I went to a place called the Academy of Contemporary Music, did a vocal music performance degree, had the business side, and I found that bit really engaging. But kind of coming out of uni, had been prepared a little bit for the businessy bit, but potentially less so for the actual graft of the art, the muscle of how do I not just wait for life tragedy to hit before I'm moved in the shower and have to grab my phone for a lyric. How do I manufacture this and make it happen? And I kind of had a few years where I was in a duo and we did that classic straight out of uni, oh my God, a label wants to work with us. And I'll never forget writing with Corinne Bailey Ray's first album writer and being we're driving up and just shake it oh my God, we made it, Mom, we made it. And of course we hadn't made it, but had a few beautiful years of getting to write and be overwhelmed and be overexcited and have some rubbish managers and some really shit music industry situations. And then had some friends who I'd known from uni ask me if I wanted to do BVs for them, and they're called Hon. And at the time, they'd actually sung at my wedding, and they'd been good friends of mine at uni, and I just thought they were hilarious because they always wore these pointy shoes and matching tartan. And went to kind of discover what they do a little bit and found out that they're doing quite well. And we had this, before their album Love Me, Love Me Not came out, we had a show, and the team were like, oh, why don't we ask BEKA to do the Crying Over You song she did at the show, why don't we ask her to do the album version? And at the time I was still in my duo. So I was like, yeah, wicked, sounds great. Still not really understanding Hon, we're doing well. Where was this grandma? And then ended up having this song on their album called Crying Over You, and we ended up touring it together. And as we were touring it, this thing of what are you going to be called for the album? Or BEKA, because I couldn't be called the duo name. And then touring it and starting to get people love the song. And then we ended up doing another song called Location Unknown. And things just went quite well. And then there was this one night, sorry, this is a long version, but there was this one...
That's right, Joel's got to follow this up, so keep going.
I'm really excited to hear yours. I'll never forget this one night, and I'm like a people person at heart, and there was this evening where we were about to do a show in LA, and we were sat there, and the person who I was in the duo with was bringing out a song. And the guys were the Hon guys were like, B, why don't you do this for yourself? And I was like, to be honest, I was like, there's so many brown girls out there trying to sing. I don't really care about singing enough. I care about what music does in culture. And they were like, but why don't you just do it? Just you do the thing that you love and do it with people you love. And I think I was so full of imposter syndrome about starting that writing process again. I definitely lent on my duo half thinking that he was the one who could write. And
Yeah.
I think having some friends be like, do it, and we will do it with you, helped me just break the glass ceiling. And so I got to spend a bit more of the time touring with them, but really ideating what I would want for this whole world of doing it myself. And then, you know, I'll explain more later, but ended up getting signed during the pandemic and had been writing for myself before that with an indie label that I'm now signed to. Not writing with them, I'm now signed to an indie label. I'm working with a really dear friend of mine who manages me. And so, yeah, it was like it's been a funny journey, but
amazing
really great
story, amazing story. Joel,
Uncle.
follow that.
Hey, that's beautiful. I felt like I relived those years, you know.
You were there for them all.
Yeah. Becca's one of the best artists, like, in the whole world, by the way. If you haven't checked out her stuff before, in terms of songwriting, craft, I'll never forget the first time I heard Becca's voice. I was like, whoa, it's like melting on the floor. Crazy talented. And you just reminded me in that story, really, of how kind of being an artist, being a songwriter is so much about the interior as well. You can have everything on paperwork, but actually you need to do the deep work of like, who am I? Like, you know, am I good enough? Those sorts of questions that sometimes they don't teach you on YouTube.
We'll get to those, definitely.
We'll get
back
there.
for us. How did you get going? Because we had Becca's story. So.
Yes, I took a much drier route. My mum and dad were like, no, you are not doing music. No way. So I kind of couldn't do that. So I went into politics naturally. And I worked in the House of Parliament for a couple of years, which was fantastic as a speechwriter.
But it makes sense, no? Like, yeah.
It kind of makes sense. It gave me a good start in writing stuff, I guess. And yes, my break came from putting my demo in parliamentary envelopes. Now, these envelopes look like you've got an envelope from the Queen. They're the most impressive looking envelope you've ever seen in your life. And I kind of naughtily took some of these envelopes and sent them to all of the Radio 1 bosses. And the next day, I got a call from the head guy being like, well, just listen to your demo, I really love it. Would you like to play Reading or Leeds? And again, that was my Corin Bailey Rain moment of going home to the boys and being like, we've made it, we're rich and famous! So we kind of quit our jobs very enthusiastically as well, all of us at the same time, which was a bad idea, to sustain a household now on zero income. But we were just excited, you know, and we survived on tap water for a little while, then got a publishing deal that was really badly negotiated because I had no leverage on my side. And then just been navigating it ever since, you know. I've always loved expressing myself through song, through being an artist, getting to connect with other people in that form.
Yeah.
Ended up signing a deal with Virgin EMI a couple years later. Very long story. Came out of that, worked with some crazy people in LA. COVID happened, and then since then, just been navigating the indie route, which has been awesome.
Because you're both fantastic artists and songwriters, but you're both independent. Which is interesting from... we've just lost the projection of you. Sorry, I seem to have said that on
Where
cue.
are we gone?
He's back. They're back. Maybe they're not changing thought. Both indie.
Yeah.
So you're both artists, obviously... And this is my little story, how I know these two, because I don't know them personally, but I remember hearing the Hon song you were on and going, oh my God, this is great, sort of melt on the floor. And then Joel, I discovered in 2015 when he was having his moment, right? And so here we all are. So watching their journeys unfold from far away has been quite interesting to now have you both here. So you're both independent now. So how would you say that affects your work as a sort of artist, songwriter, if I can put that to you first? Because it's not the same as having a nice big major label machine behind you, is it?
Yeah, it's been fascinating actually because I haven't known any different. And so the way that our team is structured is that it's kind of me and Tando, who is my manager, but also a really dear friend. And his whole thing about management is about managing you holistically, 360 human. Your art comes often from who you are. So let me manage who you are.
I think we'll get him in. Him in next.
Yeah, it would be a real treat. We would bring signs, I think, wouldn't we? And cheerlead at the back. But then we have had to bring in all of the team. And so we'll often have conversations about major labels, and Tando will often remind me that we get a lot of freedom right now. And I don't know that. I forget that. Because in my head, I'm like, someone I don't know is going to tell me to change a verse that was intrinsically about my life experience for what? Like, it makes no sense to me. And I think it's just often this reminder that actually there's a real freedom we have right now to curate the journey. What songs do we want, when? And there's not that, I guess, sometimes stress that you can have, potentially what I hear about. But then also equally, when you want a great big push and you mentally are suffering and you aren't doing as well and you aren't able to motivate your team in the same way, I think that often does also have an effect. So I think the kind of feeling of being like CEO is definitely more of a feeling potentially than my other friends who maybe are signed to a major, where you have a greater infrastructure sometimes. But there's also something really powerful about collaborating with others, PR, live, tour managers, lighting people, radio, and having to have them interested and bought into you, and not just because they're told to do it. Which I think, there's a beautiful art to that as well.
Definitely.
What do you think, Jolie?
So well said.
Really well said. I also think you work really well as an indie artist because as a personality, you very much, I think you find it easy and also life-giving to prioritize aesthetics and branding and making networks with people. Like, you will go and do that. Like, you're a natural hustler in that way. And I don't think it's a grind for you either. It's like part of the art. And whereas I think the label will sometimes provide that infrastructure for people that don't necessarily find that too easy, for an artist like yourself, that might then cause a clash where you got somebody in branding that's like, oh, why hasn't she listened to my ideas? And you're like, well, you might be like, well, I know exactly what I want already, but thanks anyway. For me, pros and cons. I love being signed to a label because everything was paid for.
but it's recharged. It's on your budget sometimes.
Oh, yes. I had accepted, I think, that I'm never seeing a penny from this ever again. And somebody told me that when I signed. I was like, okay, cool. So I'm going to keep taking these Diet Cokes out of the vending machine as long as I can. So we kind of tried to get the best mix. We got a mix from like Manny Mannequin.
Damn.
Like 10K. Shoom. Quick mix.
Quick pay.
Amazing mix, to be fair. But I'm not paying 10K. Things like that, I really appreciated not having to think about the financials. On the flip, I don't necessarily enjoy conflict resolution. And it came with a lot of conflict. Like artwork and deciding what order of the songs were going to be, and we should do some random cover because that would be good for that type of algorithm. Crazy. Conflict. And I felt like a lot of my life was, and I quite like being a nice person that pleases people. So that really went against my personality and I think caused me a lot of stress. And ultimately, I was the one that had to compromise and bend because I wanted to be a nice person. And in the end, I think part of my art suffered because of that reason. So, yeah.
Can I ask you a question? So sorry, JD. Do you know, in that situation, were there times where the conflict was different because you felt you had a trust with the people? So were there characters who you were more trusting towards, and therefore, when they say, let's move this around, let's do this cover, it's like, cool, or not?
Yes, there was a lady there called Dan Sanders. Shout out to Dan Sanders, one of the most amazing people I've ever met.
She might watch it back.
And she really was my saving grace. I had a classic situation where I got signed to a great guy called Glyn Akins. He was fantastic.
Loveliest,
Lovely guy, and he just got me. He was like 100% got me what I was trying to do. 4 months later, gone.
He's left.
So so the guy that believed in me, championed me, how we had this vision together was gone, and all of a sudden I was in this big label and there was nobody there for me. And Dan kind of adopted me in that way. She was like the creative crazy lady in this room that she had, full of all these like images and costumes and everything like that nobody really spoke to unless she spoke to you, type of thing. She was like the pinnacle of everything, and I was like, I really need to make friends of you. Managed to wriggle my way into her life, and she kind of A&R'd my project really after that, and just put me at ease. I really, really loved that. She was my saving grace.
So the reason I ask, there's a reason for that. We're talking about both these incredible people being artists. Obviously, you are writers, but Joel hit on it slightly, is the flow of money. It's something we've discussed here at previous Music Industry Mondays about royalty payments and so on. So something that you do as an independent artist, which is very interesting, is Joel runs the bakery. He doesn't quite yet sell pastries, right? Or do you?
Not quite. I make some
soon?
good ones though, but I don't sell them.
Not yet. He might open up a pop-up if we're nice. So that is essentially a way of turning over revenue, isn't it? So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because it's very clever.
Absolutely. It's been one of the best things that I've ever done. It does so many things. I think I'm realizing more and more and more to cherish the one and cherish the two and cherish the five, and not be caught up in this idea that one day my life will just take off and hundreds of thousands of people will love me. It's just like, okay, there's one person in front of me here that loves my music. Like, how are we gonna continue with this relationship? I'm gonna give you something, and you're gonna give me something back, and it's gonna be life-giving for both of us. So the idea behind the bakery was, I want a bunch of people to fund my album, and in return, I'll give you writing workshops, exclusives, and things like that. And it became just as life-giving for me, because all of a sudden I was part of a community, and it was like this co-creation process. Yeah. The thing that I'd always almost like longed for, that's hard to see on a stream, hard to see on an Insta comment. We can all click fire emojis really quickly, but who's willing to give you £4 a month? And those are the people that you're like, you know what, I'm making my music for you, and that's okay.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely so critical. And that leads on really well to the next point, which is songwriting. Because for both of you, you've written songs for yourselves, but you've also written songs with and for other people, right? So building, you're doing that for that one person. So when it comes to your creative practice in the studio, for example, here we go. Hey, I ain't even finished the question just yet. How do you, as one of the top writers in the UK, get into that zone to say, I'm in this session today. How do I go about writing something if it's not for me as an artist? It might be for someone else. Sorry.
I actually feel so excited to hear what you're going to say about this, because I think this is like what you will put on the planet to do, Jolie. You are so. I think there's like, as a writer, you either nurture yourself and you nurture your art out of yourself, don't you? You're like, oh yeah, okay, I will say I feel left constantly in my life. It's been hard, and then you're like, oh crap, that's come out. But to make a safe space for another human being, to not just feel like we're going for that pop smash, which is nothing bad, pop smash, slay all day, but having someone who you want to repeatedly write with, who you feel like is a safe space for all your secrets and your self, is like really profound. And that's what you do, because you're so unendingly nurturing. So I think you should answer first. Thank you.
Hey, don't look at me. I didn't pass that.
I love writing with other people. I love writing with other artists. I feel like it's a very unique role that is actually being underappreciated and being lost in the music industry right now. Labels and A&Rs do not know how important the songwriter is in a room.
Truth.
Not talking about producer, not talking about an artist, I'm talking about a songwriter. And there's sometimes people have this image of this like Nashville guy with a pen in his lips, like writing the lyrics, and that's not how it goes. The most effective songwriters that I've seen are more like therapists than songwriters, and more like project managers than songwriters. They can sense the vibe in a room. They know, is the artist feeling okay? Are they feeling themselves? Do they need some time, maybe just to go for a walk around the block or not? Do we need to order food? Good songwriters know how to order food at the right time.
Deliveroo ninjas, that's what I used to say.
Absolutely. They are the ones that will deliver the song from the heart of the artist onto the logic file of the producer. It means everybody does their job perfectly. I'm so sad that it is a role that is overlooked a little bit, and the more and more producers have to both make the whole song and also kind of put on that cap of like, are you okay? Is everything all right? But yeah, I love doing it because it's fantastic getting to watch somebody take something from their heart that they didn't know they had and put it on into a song.
That's a great point, though, because obviously the dynamics in a room are critical, and we're not gonna start dishing out too harshly, but so you're in a room, and Joel said it perfectly. Nowadays, you might not be able to roster the writer on the writer in the right day. There's a lot of onus on producers. So when it comes to you writing, do you prefer it just to be yourself and a producer that you trust, or would you rather have more collaborators in the room, or Do you think it's different depending on
Yeah.
personality?
Do you know what? I've felt so much bolder about making this decision lately because I think from the beginning of the journey, it was like, what does one do? And I'd spent a lot of years writing as a two with others. But you have your sacred human being. So you can look at each other and be like, we ain't taking none of this. And you both know. Whereas when it's just you, I found for myself, this whole journey of being an artist has been about giving myself permission to follow my gut, which is, sounds so basic bitch, but it just is. All the cliches are just so profoundly true. And I think for a long time, I have ADHD, and this plays a really big role in my writing because I often will be like, okay, I need to come with some ideas ahead of the session. But I have a problem with time management, and I have a problem with doing things when they're urgent, and that's just a part of being neurodivergent. And I hated this thing about me for a long time before I found out that it was part of neurodivergence. So coming to a session, and there's someone else there, and there's the producer, and they're facilitating you. It gave me this feeling of a bit of like a princessy ick. Like everyone's there like, so how's your life? Yeah. Oh, okay. You know what? We should write about that. Yeah. And you're like, don't tap me on the shoulder and don't say we should write about that. Because I don't know yet if I want to do that. And I think what you said, Joel, is so profound that it's like a cultural ninja just has to come in and facilitate space. And I think for me and how I work, I'm a massive atmosphere connection human being. So get in, we're making tea, we're having a long conversation. I don't really want to have to feel like we're talking to an end and then we should get on with some music, because what's going to happen is we'll talk around the hills and the mountains. There'll be a safety that comes, even with a friend I've known for years, like we're going to get to that safety level. And the more we're talking and the less we're writing, the more I'm thinking, okay, you feel safe here then. We're not trying to just get to an end. Then there's this like intangible safety that happens where you bring your ideas. And for me, I've written a bunch. I don't feel super scared about writing, but being with one other human being, there can be that, every single time it can feel like a war internally. So for me, to answer your question in a long-winded way, I've realized I actually work really well with that one other person. Yeah. That producer, writer, just that writer. And then if there's another person, they have to be almost like a part of my being. That it's like if I went in with Joel and a producer, fine, because Joel knows everything there is about my life. But it felt like a quite scary thing to say, hey, is it okay if we don't have two people in? Yeah. Is it all right? Because I think I'll be okay. And I'm not sure that I'll be okay always managing the dynamics. As someone quite emotionally aware, I don't know if I'm going to be great with managing your two's dynamics, because now that's distracting me from a safety. Does that make sense? But I mean, God, it feels scary. You feel like, especially as a woman, and maybe also as a mixed race woman with big hair, there can be this vibe of like, oh, here comes a diva. And you're like, no, actually, what does it look like to know what you need and be able to assert it? And by assert, I mean gently say, this is what I need. Definitely.
So I just want to do a really quick survey of the room, because we've got a packed room. So those of you and songwriters or artists in here, put your hands up if you don't mind. Put them right up. Okay, so quite a lot of you. That's amazing. So we've just been discussing collaboration with these two. Put your hand up if you feel like you work better when there's one or more other collaborators in your creative session for songwriting and production. Okay, put them right up. Cool. And put your hands up if you feel like it's just better with just yourself and your own ideas right now. Really interesting. It's like a 60-40, 55-45 split in favour. Interesting. So we're talking about dynamics and, of course, and the sort of industry around songwriting, because it's not just what happens in the room. I'm sure both of you have written songs that you feel are like, oh, these are stone cold bangers. Like this is a number one. The A&Rs are going to love it. The chain is going to light up when the producer sends a demo out. And then it doesn't. And it's not because your song is terrible, it's because of the dynamics in play, and you were discussing that slightly. So how does it feel sometimes knowing you're going into a session, whether it's for yourself or whether it's, for someone else or on a brief, and you feel like, even though what you might do you feel like the industry is going to take notice of that? Do you trust that they're going to know it's a good song, or do you feel like there's more in play around that?
Really good question.
Go for it.
Yeah. Don't want to get too deep, but...
Get deep. This is a safe space. Everyone's supportive in here. We've had some tough combos.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that you have to go on this road where you have to let those expectations kind of die in you, and you have to start looking at your artistry from another angle. Otherwise, you're going to be banging your head against the wall and chasing your tail. It's like what we're actually doing is like partaking in this ancient tradition of making sounds and creating songs to make us feel a certain way and connect with our deeper meaning as people. And it's like we've got this in the studio and we're making this beautiful fire and we're dancing around it. It just so happens that while we've done that, somebody's built the circus around us and charging people $5 on the door, you know. But actually what we're making is no different to what they were making 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago. It's these hymns inside of us that need to come out to connect with people, to tell people what they really feel. And so I feel like when you're going into the room, it's about stepping into that ancient tradition and letting everything else fall away. As soon as you start chasing the industry thing, man, good luck to you, but...
I had this exact thing today, if I could just level with the squad.
Yeah, please.
So I'm writing for this project at the moment, and it's been a lot of songs we've been writing for it. Great. They've all needed to be done. Boom. Then we have this one final song. And this song we can be super free with, and I've been working with this collaborator, Toby Tripp, for the whole time.
Oh, what legends. Oh.
Just side note on Toby, the first time I ever wrote with him, he was like, he loves Joel, so I was like, okay, fantastic, this will be
Joel
a good start.
Baker fan club.
Joel Baker. And then he was like, I've got a butterfly energy. And I was just like, any man who says that, you know, it's just going to speak to me in a spiritual way. So anyway, we've done all this project, then we have this one song left. And because we can do whatever we want with this, we were like, why don't we make this a song that's going to do really well? And this title happened, and it has literally broken me over the last few weeks because I've been trying to be strategic, and it's just been a flop because every time I'm singing a melody, I know it's going to be, it's like a poppy melody that could be cool. But those aren't the things that are enough because that's not what I make as an artist. So I'm singing, literally last week this was happening, singing these melodies, and Toby's there going like, you know, try not to like super overthink, just like follow yourself. And I'm like, I can't not overthink now because I've set this title of like, I can do what I want, let's make it a boom. And then today, I had some time, just sat on my sofa, and I've realised that if I can focus on something else, press record and like let my mind go, again, like a bit neurodivergent, but just this is what works for me, and this is what's worked in the room with him, then suddenly things are happening. And so I ended up writing stuff that really moved me while shopping on Facebook Marketplace for vintage stuff for my house. And when I listened back to what I had subconsciously sung, it was like actually quite terrifying how direct it was to some stuff that I don't know even how I would verbalize to friends. And I just felt like today I was laughing like, oh God, this stuff always happens when you're going to be like amongst the family of the similar kind of people where you're like, you are grappling with something. Yeah. And so I think when you're contemplating who and what and how, it's almost like you trip yourself up from the start, unless your job is to be that top, you know. But then I think even if you are trying to do that, I don't know if you get Higher Power, Coldplay. Like, I don't know if you get Superstition. You know, some songs that everybody can sing and everyone knows and all the nanas are bopping to and all the like young people are bopping to. You're not going to write that, I don't think, because it's hard to find truth when you're being so intentional, would be my sense.
Amazing. I was going to say, so it's a form of writer's block in some way, like, and navigating that is critical. Many times I was in sessions and you just know it's just not going to happen that day. And sometimes you see producers trying to steer it in a way. So that's a fantastic example. How when you hit a wall, and everyone hits the wall, whether it's running or songs or production, or Joel, how do you navigate that? What's your advice to people in the room who probably go through that themselves? Do you go and bake some pastries?
What you just said is actually really profound. It's really, that is the way to do it, but it's so hard to get there, of like distracting yourself from the thing to like loosen your grip on the thing, and then it all rises up. And it's just about that in different ways, you know. It's just distracting yourself from the pressure of trying to be brilliant or trying to be perfectionist or all of that stuff. You know, that wasn't there when you started, and you just picked up a guitar and it just happened, or you just sung and it just happened. There was no good, there was no bad. As you go along the journey, those boundaries start to come in, and start to help, or not help, very unhelpfully inform your choices, which kind of dulls the magic a little bit. So it's just about finding the magic again. For me, I'll go listen to like an old Bob Dylan album. Right?
You got a yes for that.
And that will remind me of what I find amazing. As a 12-year-old under my Simpsons duvet, just like, this is like voodoo or something. This is crazy. It's just about refinding what excites you.
Yeah, perfect. So there's a lot of songwriting teams out there. We've both been talking about that. Now, I used to work for someone that both these people know, and one day we had someone from Max Martin's team come along to the session. Now, for those of you who don't know Max Martin, he's that Swedish genius that has far too many big hits, and he needs to give some around the table, But his team is very interesting, and they have people in that team that don't write lyrics, but only do melodies. They have no lyric, and I don't know if you've worked with any of them. Wow. How would that, when you have something that's quite, let's say, left field curveball in a writing situation, would that throw you off, or would you sort of embrace that?
I think melody is a fascinating topic because, in my experience, for me, I write quite gutturally in terms of melody. Okay. So it's almost like your routine, when everyone has their routine in the way that they shower and then the way that they deodorant and cream themselves. I hope everyone puts cream on every day, by the way, and SPF. SPF is key for all skin tones.
This is where you need your own product to shop, and we'll stick
Come
it
on.
on there.
It's one we made earlier.
Missed opportunity there.
Yeah. I think similarly with melody, it's kind of this, for me, it's like it's made up of everything that you grew with. The way that like the wind sounded in the car when your parents would drive you, the way that you only had Quincy Jones played and there was no pop music in the house. It's like all those little things inform your intrinsic language of melody. So for me, when it comes to melody, what I love is when potentially it started from in me, and then potentially I have someone who's going to take me to like a space I couldn't have heard. That really excites me. But I find that often subconsciously I can push against melody because it's like my own language. Whereas lyrically, and I've had this with Joel actually, Joel thinks in ways that I don't think. I'm much more direct in my writing. My writing will be like, I hate life. Whereas Joel would be like, the clouds formed and you're like, whoa, it's beautiful, metaphorical. And I love that because it's just like sprinkles over you. Yeah. Whereas for me, the language of my melody is it's like an inner thing. But again, I think it's about where your personal spark lies, because for some people it's the way that they pen. It's like wild for them, and actually, melodically, it's never going to move too much. So having someone else bring that, it can be exciting. But I think you've got to have that boldness. You just got to get used to being like, let me go with this inner thing first, potentially.
Lyrics or melody? Where do you start?
Lyrics.
Okay.
I'm a sucker for a lyric. I need a lyric. The way that I grew up in this thing with rappers.
Right. I did want to get onto this, but you're getting there before me. Go for it. Go.
The way, the guys, we all quit our jobs together. They were producers and rappers. And so I was there with my acoustic guitar singing all my lovey-dovey songs. But the rules were the same. Like, where's the bars? Right? So I had to try and impress them with my singing song and lovey songs with lyrics that would make them laugh and make them go, that's a sick lyric. But that's the framework that I kind of came up in and was developed in a way. So I'm just a sucker for a lyric. That's where I'll start and then try and put melody to it. I am such a little baby beginner at melody. I really struggle with it. And at the same time, it's so interesting. I've never thought about melody like that before, as it's like almost like your genealogy inside of you, of everything that you're comfortable with, which also made me want to, reminded me that, flip man, like as songwriters, I don't feel like you need to be changing people's genealogies and stuff. It's more like encouraging it out of them. Yeah. The best songwriters that I've worked with would just sometimes just gas me up.
I'm going to ask you.
Joel, you're amazing.
Who, if we go there first, I'll start with you then. What is one of the most, favourite collaborators or songwriters that you've worked with? And you cannot answer Joel Baker.
Joel Baker. Okay, Dan Smith, The Noisettes. This was one of the most permission-giving sessions I've ever had in my life, and it happened quite in the initial, before getting signed. And I went to his house, and it was a kitchen, trees everywhere in the front room. Everything was in one room. And it was like the wildest space I'd ever been in my life. And we sat down, and I had to drive to Brighton. And the whole drive, I'd been like voice memo on in the car, like, you know, trying to find something, and had nothing, but had loads of stuff going on in my life, but just had nothing. And so I was chatting his ear off, really, because I was freaking nervous. But he was giving it back, and we spoke for ages. We went like deep into these wormholes of fascination. And then I'll never forget, went to the loo, came back, and he was like on the synth. And the way he facilitated out of me exactly what you're saying, he just like kind of brought out this song, which is actually one of my all-time favorites, will forever be a favorite. Probably won't be like a fan favorite, but a song called Green Lights. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to the lyric, it's so intense, and everything that was going on in my stratosphere. And he just like, it was like he just blew into the space. It was because he was so safe, but also he was quite eccentric, and he made me feel quite boring, which was brilliant. Like, there was no too muchness. And as I think something probably in my life that I've struggled with is a sense of being too much in lots of different spaces. Yeah. So being with somebody who was like just so underwhelmed, was just like, I don't think anything about you really. It wasn't about whether he accepted me or not. He was on his own playing field as a human, and was just like, this is a space for creation. But also, let's just know one another first. It was just like a great BEKA hack. He just hacked me hard.
Beautiful.
It's a bit of a weird statement.
That's so good. No, it's all good. And Joel, you can't answer BEKA.
Yeah, I would. Otherwise, I would.
I know, that's what I know. Easy way out. You both say each other.
Alexa, play Green Lights by BEKA.
Hey, Amazon don't sponsor us, right? Yeah, give us a second.
Best producers I've worked with, hands down. Easy question. OG Volta.
Okay.
Raul and Mark. I met them at a writing camp, and there was one of the rooms that I was in, and I was like, oh, can we make this sound a little bit more like the John Bellion latest album? And they were like, you know the guys that made that album are in the next room, right? And my jaw dislocated. And for the next 24 hours, I was scheming of like, how can I make them my best friends in the world? And the next day, I was actually with them in the session. And so brought out, you know, that like holy grail concept that you have, that you're like, okay, I'm saving this for the best day of my life. And I unlocked the safe key and brought out that concept out for this one day. It was like a Pokeball with my Pikachu and like, let's go. And they,
smash.
That was it. And they loved it. And we really connected straight away. But the thing that they're great as is just making you feel like a really great artist. I was like, I'm great. I'm amazing. And that's not like to say that I always feel like that every day. I don't. I really don't. In fact, my default is the other way. So if I can be in a room with somebody that can look me in the eyes and goes, I really like what you're doing. Give me a pat on the back. I'm like one of those footballers that need the arm around the shoulder, you know. And everything comes out of me in that moment. That's what great songwriting, great producers can do. And we made a bunch of great stuff. Some of the most enjoyable times in music have been with those guys.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I hope you've all got questions ready, by the way, because if you don't, then I don't know what you're here for. Because these two are the real deal. Before we start wrapping up and we move on to the open mic section of this Music Industry Monday, I did want to talk about something a little bit controversial. So 2022, we did this exact same panel. We did songwriters again. It was a roadblock, and you know, we had a really interesting panel, including one songwriter called Emily Phillips, who I've got a name check. It's absolutely lovely. You might know Emily. And we all sort of understand that songwriters are underpaid. I think that would be an agreement, you know. Even if you sign the biggest publishing deal in the world, are you going to recoup it? Well, not when Spotify pays you however much. And it's something we've discussed here. And that's why I started the whole conversation with talking about you as artists. Because you think it's two revenue streams, right? You've got being an artist, being a songwriter. Yeah. So how important is it, do you feel, that you've got another sort of musical bow and arrow? If you're being a songwriter, do you feel like you need to be an artist as well?
Great question.
Who wants to go first?
I encourage songwriters too. I really do. I think it's a really good way to both express yourself, work things out in real time. I think it's really important for songwriters to understand how it feels to be an artist on release day and putting artwork out there. knowing that your friends are going to see stuff, like, how does that make you feel? I think it makes you a better songwriter if you're also, as a songwriter, doing something in the artist lane. It can have 2 monthly listeners, one of them being your grandma. It doesn't matter. But I would strongly encourage that. Also, just from a revenue point of view as well, it just makes sense. It really does. Like you said, the songwriter income has been decimated, which is one of the reasons why there's not that many quote-unquote songwriters anymore, because it's really, really hard to be. So yes, from both a point of view of being a better songwriter, but also just to pay British gas, put some stuff out on the master side, because that's just the way the world works these days. It's crazy.
And Becca?
I also love that point about empathy. I think the empathy is so key. What is it to be in a room with somebody when everyone wants to talk about your life or your experience or your perspective, and have that pressure from the external people looking at you being like, we're here for you, but we also need to get paid. And I think having that turning table, empathy-wise, is a really powerful thing. And also, I think the multi-hyphenate nature of society right now is a really exciting thing. And having it, I think when we can get rid, and this is literally a chat I had last week, this is like a journey I'm on, when we can get rid of the ladder of this, when I release this will equal to this, and then we're going to get hit, and then finally we're somewhere, you're kind of like, well, if you love songwriting, there'll be things that are innate to you that you want to bring out, so just do it. As opposed to, I need to get somewhere and I need to facilitate all these people to get there too.
New Music Friday must be...
Yeah.
And then it's like, then I need to be halfway up New Music Friday, and then I need to be in the top 10. And
it's relentless, yeah. And I think as much as people will say, it's all rigged, or, the label paid for this, we don't believe it. When you're in it, you're like, I'm just not good enough.
Yeah.
But I think fighting those things by doing them is quite powerful.
Amazing, fantastic insights. And just on this point, when we did have Emily here, and it's something that I've heard from my role on the business side of things, sort of being a bit of a data nerd and figuring out what's going on, some songwriters are now asking to be cut in on the master share. So for those of you that, just a very quick layman's overview, if you're a producer, you may get an upfront fee plus your royalty, which is called points, which is a point is a percentage. 1% PPD means you've got 1 point of the artist share on the record. Now, songwriters are being paid so poorly, I think we're all in agreement, that some songwriters, like Emily Phillips, who was here last year and had the room riled up at this one, saying, well, I refuse to do anything now if I'm not cut in on a master share royalty. Yeah. So what do you two think of that?
100%! What are we doing here? Like, we're trying to make something together, right? What is this dividing that? It's like, no, like, if I wasn't in the room at that point, then I deserve part of what we're making. Like, we are living in this Western construct of individualism, whether it's me or you. It's like, no, like, that's not what we're making when we're lighting this fire together. Like, who knows who put this stick where, or no. We're just trying to make a fire together. That is it. And so if you start drawing lines, I'm out. So I really respect Emily. She is such an amazing fighter for the voice of songwriters in this country. She's incredible, 100%. They also, I believe that she's talking about per DMs as well. So if you're working for a label...
I was going to get to that. Sorry. Yeah. Go on.
The bars that were just dropped by Joel Baker were wow. You make everything sound like a fantastic song. I back it. I think when I first heard it, I was like, can someone explain this to me, please? And then breaking it down, it's logical. Yeah. It's just logical, isn't it? If I had a writer in the room with me who wanted a point, peng, great, let's do it. And also, I think it's on the onus of the artist also to be like, let me not wait for you to come to me.
Because it comes out of their share, right? Yeah. So then this comes to something that I've done in my career to get myself started. I was a staff writer. I was paid out of my royalty credit, right? So that was me when I was discovering Joel and Becca, like 2015, 2014. So that comes back to the PDs, being paid per day. Yeah. But now in my case, I got no royalty percentage. Do you think that if you could take a per day and get songwriting royalty, or do you feel like you get a per day and none?
It depends how major the label is that you're working with. If they've got, because I'm sorry, major labels, but you can't tell me that £70 is too much, because I've seen the Ubers. These guys will get an Uber just to go get a tortilla for lunch or whatever. And you're saying that you can't afford to pay the songwriter that's actually writing the song, that's keeping the lights on in that building? No, there's so much wastage in labels. Actually spend it well for once, you know. Otherwise, we're going to have no industry left for any of us.
Cool. You?
The thing I find deep about that is like how much are we talking per day? Because if I'm employing a friend as a session player, they're going to get X amount, which I feel like sounds more than what the per day like fee would be. So I think as a topic, it feels sticky because how you're trying to put a worth on it, and I don't know how that gets measured. So
it's something we've been discussing throughout this conversation.
I guess I just have a big question mark about how that gets worked out. I back it, and also feel like I'd love to be educated more on how those decisions are being made about what that fee is.
Definitely. I think the mathematics of the music industry is definitely something that's going to be debated for a long, long while to come. Now, we are going to run out of time for open mic, so I just want to run the microphone on the floor around for questions. So if you've got a question, please put your hands up. Here we go. Ready. Let's go right at the front here, man, in the red shirt.
Hey, thank you so much for that talk. Like, so many little gems dotted around. Had a separate question for either of you, if that's cool.
Make it quick. This isn't the COVID, sort of, press briefings.
Okay. You mentioned you're a hustler. Would love to know like advice on the business side of things, and for yourself working in politics. I also did sign academic at uni. Would love to know how you like live that double life of suits and like posh language and then songwriting, and also if that helped you with your songwriting afterwards. Thank you.
Darling, great question.
Love that. So you're asking about the business side. I've got any tips for the business side?
Yeah.
I feel like if you're an artist and songwriter, I feel like the person who manages you is so key. They are your face to the industry. And I remember having a manager prior who was a terrible face. You wouldn't meet him and think me, whereas you would meet my manager and then meet me and be like, oh, they feel like, they feel like there's a tie there. And I think those relationships are so key. That's what the entire industry runs on. And where it doesn't run on that, people are like, oh God, he's a bit of a twat, but I'm going to have a meeting with him. It's quite intense. So I think I would say making sure that the people who are closest to you, representing you to people who are not like you, have a likeness. So you can, and the trust is key.
Brilliant. Go on. From suit to songwriting.
If you remember one thing tonight, remember that. Like when you're choosing a manager, get them somebody that is going to represent you as a person. That is such a good gem. Politics, taught me so much. I mean, gosh, I was just changing in the toilets, like out of my Marks and Spencer suit into my like little Top Man t-shirt, whatever like that, for all my little things. It was strange. But inside, it's like, I know I'm an artist. And I think the way that I knew is because when I was around the politics people, I kind of felt like that guy in the corner, like not laughing at any of the jokes. But when I was around producers, artists, singers, I came alive. I love being in rooms like this where it's like we're all on the same page. It brings me to life. That's how I knew I was making the right choice. Politics also taught me how to turn up on time. Taught me about deadlines, taught me about professionalism. So I think it's a good thing.
Amazing. Great. Cool. Next question. Let's go right next to you right there. Just pass the mic along. Thank you. Cool.
What do you think of people using AI to write music?
I love how you look at each other to see.
I have no... that's absolutely fine for me. I don't necessarily know if we know the depths of it yet.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think it's still on the same level as like probably how they looked at sampling in the 70s and the 80s and certain elements. It's still a little bit of a gimmick, and I think if we use it right, because at the moment we're still in control of AI, right, technically, then we can harness it to make beautiful things as humans. It's just, we can get into the philosophy of where AI goes. Is it going to start controlling us? Who knows? But right now, I think it's interesting.
Cool. Follow up to you directly.
Hello.
So some record labels, in particular Warner recently, Universal previously, have said that when starting to put in clauses into these deals where you are basically assigning your right to be made into an AI thing, whether that's a voice like Drake and Weeknd, who the guy who made that is now nominated for a Grammy, obviously, and then Warner taking your likeness. Would you sign a deal like that? Even if your lawyer had looked at it?
I think with this topic being so fresh, I'd have to go for some in-depth, deep dive before I do anything like that. I think we're at the very beginnings. We're almost back where people were when they were signing away their rights to everything. Right. And so I think my sense would be probably not, because we don't know enough yet. So do I need it enough? Or should I just work at Tesco? Maybe I'd pick Tesco. over signing away that stuff.
Cool. That's a soundbite. If everyone was, where's the next question?
Over here.
Cool.
Sorry.
Let's just go right here.
It's sort of a 2-in-1 question. So I want to know, one, say like you've spent years building up your repertoire and your archive of all the different stuff that you want to release, and you're working with a producer. You've worked with a producer for over many years. You've done a particular song, but a new artist comes along, and they then get to sing on that song you've not yet released. How would you feel as an artist, and do you also feel that it's important as an artist to show versatility in different genres?
So
Great question.
Yeah, amazing question. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the scenario is you've written a song with a producer, and it's your song from you, and they've got someone else to sing it and release it. They're about to. So, yeah. And in this scenario, do you want to release it? Or does this figure want to release it?
I would like to also release it.
Okay. I think when a song comes from you initially and you're collaborating with a collaborator, in my mind, it's your intellectual property. So
It is, legally speaking, yeah.
Yeah, so somebody else doesn't just get to come up and pick it up. And otherwise, if that was the case, the world would break, I think, in terms of songwriting.
Becca saw exactly what I was going to do. You saw me sort of go on the business side. I went,
Yeah.
because that's totally right. Like, if it's your song, you can shut it down. You can say, sorry, I've got a percentage of that. I don't want it going nowhere.
Absolutely, yeah. I had a similar situation to that and was just like, I don't know if I'll ever want to use it yet, so I'm not ready to give it away. Yeah.
Yeah, power lies with you. I just want to make sure, if you've got any questions, I just want to raise hands very clearly. Can we go over here, Felix, over here, and then we will go over there, and we're going to call it there, I'm afraid.
Hi, sorry, you might have answered that, but I'll ask it anyway. So, I'm a songwriter. I write melodies and lyrics as well. And at the moment, I'm writing a song. I've got the topic, I've got the idea, I've got everything, the energy and the whole vibe. But I'm just, I keep hitting the wall, you know. Every time I play a riff on a guitar or write a melody, it just doesn't sound right. Do you have any tips to, I don't know.
To get around that. You've got all the ingredients, but it ain't quite getting together right now.
Yeah.
Sheila David talks about 4 processes in songwriting, and part of that is just letting it marinate for a little bit. So it might be the song's just not ready to be born yet, and that's absolutely fine. Move on to the next idea for a little bit. You've got that idea, it's fine. It's might just be in pregnancy, okay, and that's fine. You might come back to that idea in a year and you go, I know exactly what guitar riff to play. So just keep it moving. Go on to the next idea, and yeah. Don't get hung up on that one thing. Sometimes it just needs to marinate.
Amazing. Okay, right. Let's go to the final one, just over here in the white top, right over there. Put your hand up in the microphone. Amazing. Go
Hi,
for it.
BEKA. Hi, Joel. I have 2 questions. Quick one. Which book would you recommend right now for a songwriter? And I forgot the second one, so let's just keep it to that one.
Well, I actually sent you a book yesterday, didn't I? A couple of days ago. I'm actually like 80% of the way through of a fantastic book that a friend of mine called Carmody recommended to me called Writing Down the Bones. Writing Down the Bones. It's a fantastic, almost like daily meditation of how to get out of your head, to write the songs that you've always wanted to write. It's kind of songwriting plus Zen meditation. It's absolutely fantastic. Writing Down the Bones. Go and buy it.
Amazing. What a recommendation. Okay. Did you remember your other question?
I did.
Go for it.
Will you be offering a songwriting session workshop anytime soon?
You can join the bakery.
Commission.
No, in all seriousness, if you find me on Instagram or anything like that, I have links to writing workshops we do every 2 to 3 weeks so come write with us. It's fantastic. The bakery, it's where it's happening. When are we getting as a guest on the bakery?
Excited to join the bakery. Also, I was going to say, genuinely, and you probably also feel this way, please, if you've got any questions, I'm not a holy grail of anything, but I think when someone's doing something alongside the family of creators, just voice note me, message me on Instagram, and it'll be literally the joy of my life to voice note you back. I mean it, because I think if you don't have people who are doing a similar thing to you, where you have a space to be like, I know this question sounds really dumb, but ... then we don't move.
Totally. And we
would
know
have
it's
loved
a
to
lot of
have
pressure
this,
in here.
right?
Yeah,
We would have
100%.
loved to have this when we were coming up as artists. So before we move on, are we about to finish?
We are going to wrap it up. I just wanted to go on, say your piece. And
I just wanted, just not to embarrass you, but I really love what you've built here. I think it's so important for the community here in London, in the whole of the UK. It's so important that we have this space, and what you're doing, facilitating the space, is so important. And so I just want to hats off to you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, right, my turn to embarrass them now. Okay, so we have the baby pictures at the back of the room. No, I'm joking. Likewise, that's very kind. This is a safe space for everyone. No question is a bad question. Becca's been very kind. I'm sure you can hit up Joel as well. This is what Music Industry Mondays is for. Mondays is the shittest day of the week, and we've all got the questions, and we want to try and break it down. So we really appreciate your coming out every week, 54 times in a row. For these, we'll have more of these. So thank you so much for coming. Can I hear it one last time for Becca and Joel Baker?